And there we go. There's your introduction, guys. I'm going to jump off because Leighton's got a bunch of work for me to do in the background. So you guys take it away and we'll see you in a while.
Thanks, Ken. So welcome back, everybody, the audience. Good to see you again, Av. Hope you had a great week. Keith, welcome to the show. I'd like to just dive right in and talk about your background with where you started back in the 80s with, aquaponics.
Okay. Well, for you that don't know me, I am one of the founders of fishbrew, but my background started in the fields of Western Mass, where I grew up on a farm. Came from third generation in this country farmer, soil farmer, diverse farm. We had cows, chickens, pigs, soil. We grew tobacco, cucumbers, corn, hay, a general typical diverse farm in New England. Then I decided to go to school, and I decided I was going to go to school so I wouldn't have to be a farmer. Because my father was a farmer, a part-time farmer. My grandfather was a farmer. And I decided I was going to go to school for economics and went to school for resource economics. But then accidentally stopped in a place that was doing hydroponics and aquaculture. And that was 1992, January 21st, 1992. My oldest brother was an engineer in a facility, and I had never heard of fish farming or aquaponics because aquaponics hadn't been coined yet. So I went into this facility blind and ended up working there for 6 years, building a 1 acre, 2-story greenhouse that we produced 1,800 cases of basil and 5,000 pounds of tilapia. It was one of the first commercial aquaponics systems in the country. Cut my teeth on a big building, made a lot of mistakes, learned an awful lot, killed a lot of fish, and then kind of moved around in my career. I've been lucky to travel all over the country and in different parts of the world, building aquaculture facilities, both research, flow through, pond culture, cage culture, deep ocean. Won't bore you with all the details because it was a long adventure. I met Leighton somewhere along the way, probably about 12 or 13 years ago. We met at a food conference. We had a lot in common, but one thing he was really interested in was the fish waste products that we had, or that access I had to different farms. At that time, I didn't own the farms I have now. So it was always the hunt for the better fish waste. Always doing aquaponics in most of my career and most of the farms I worked at. It was always, you could grow leafy greens, basil, lettuce, kale, but you couldn't really do much more than that with your typical aquaponics system. And as I moved through my career, I met a lot of interesting people and got the opportunity to buy a farm on Cape Cod, which is a flow-through trout hatchery built in the 1860s. One of the oldest trout hatcheries in Massachusetts. Sand bottom, beautiful water source, incredible piece of land, sits on about 8.5 acres. And my business partner and I bought that in 2015. Leighton showed up. We bought that in October of 2015. Leighton showed up in November of 2015, not too long after we bought it, and walked around the site. And the downside was we couldn't find any fish waste. Because there being sand bottom raceways in the water flow we had, you really didn't see it build up anywhere. We had a settling pond, and Leighton, I believe, sampled out of the settling pond and was quite impressed with what he found in the settling pond, but it didn't give us access to what we wanted. So in year 2, we actually built, we took down an old system and rebuilt it with tanks and used some research system knowledge. Most of my background has been in recirculating indoor aquaculture. So my partner and I built a small system that took water from the pond that had already been cleaned and filtered, ran it through a biological filter, ran it through a filter system that we put together to purposely collect the waste. Not for fish brew, just to collect the waste so we could harvest the waste and not put it back in the environment. Well, then Leighton came back out in 2016, 2017 and took another sample. And well, this was a different kind of waste. I had started doing some aquaponics in my 3,000 square foot greenhouse we have on site. And I was finding I could grow tomatoes, I could grow peppers, I could grow cannabis without using any other additives. which I had never seen before with fish waste in aquaponics. Fruiting vegetables were always very difficult. There was always lack of silica, boron, manganese, a lot of potassium, a lot of the things that the fish use, just like we as people use. But what was interesting is the microbiology in it, as Leighton started finding, was the key to it. Because it was a 160 plus year old hatchery and it was sand bottom and it was silica based, we also had something called diatoms living in the water, which were amazing. So we had this plankton living in the water that produced oxygen, which fed the microorganisms in the pond as well as the rest of the farm, which made it really cool. Diatoms are also very high in silica because they're silica coated plankton. They produce oxygen. So then we started playing around, looking at it a little bit more, and Leighton was doing a lot more research than I was at the time. And then the pandemic hit, and it was time to do something to bring in more revenue, because our farm went from stocking fish. So the pandemic hit in March. Our stocking season for this farm starts in March. And I went from stocking fish every single day till the end of May to having about 15 deliveries for the whole 2.5 months, because everything got canceled and shut down, as it did for the rest of the world. So we had to come up with another way to figure out something. At that time, we had, just before the pandemic hit, we had decided that we were going to do something with the fish waste. We just didn't know what it was going to be. And fishbrew came around. I had an employee working for me at one of my other farms. We also own 2 other farms. So we have an indoor trout farm in New Hampshire. We grow trout for the food market. It's an all indoor recirculating system that we designed and built. We own another facility in Turner's Falls called Great Falls, which is a large indoor barramundi farm, warm water. So all 3 farms are much different. All 3 farms have much different waste product, which was really exciting. But we also have our large farm. We have about 1 million fish on site at any given time. We have a processing room. So we were taking the waste fish, the fish that didn't make it to market, fish that came out of the processing room or left offal that came out of the processing room, and started making a hydrolysate. And the 2 of them complement each other in that the hydrolysate is a slow enzymatic process where we grind the fish, the enzymes break the fish down. We keep all the oils and fats in our hydrolysate. We don't remove any of it. We mix it, we stir it, we store it. It's a really nice 2.4.25 fertilizer, but it has all the fats and oils, which really lends well to feeding the bacteria and the microbiology. So our products complement each other. As we started going through the process of looking at this and studying it and testing it, we tested it for, I think, about everything you can possibly test under the sun. We did a DNA shotgun blast test to find out what everything in there was, at least what percentages we had of bacteria, fungi, protozoa. We have 2 on-site biologists or 2 biologists on staff that were looking at it on a daily basis. We sent it out for NPK testing, which showed very little NPK, but a lot of microbiology. We had the Soil Food Web Lab look at it, actually a couple different Soil Food Web Labs look at it, and came back with very similar results to find out that this thing was, bugs in a jug. Not only bugs in a jug, but bugs in a jug that stayed alive. And the reason they stay alive is because we have diatoms, and the diatoms actually produce the oxygen in the bottles, which allows it not to go anaerobic. Even if it goes anaerobic, it's still a very useful product, as Leighton will talk about, I'm sure, at some point in today. But majority of the time, this stuff does not go anaerobic because it does have those diatoms in there, keep the oxygen levels up in the bottles. And we've been looking at this stuff now for almost 3 years. And the bottles we have still have activity, still have biology in them, and still have diatoms reproducing inside the bottle. So really the key to our product is the diatoms. And I think we're all in the soil world just learning what diatoms really can do for plants and soil. We're seeing some incredible results because of both the microbiology and the diatoms. So in a nutshell, and then when I have nothing better to do, I also have 2 oyster farms that are not related to fish brew at this time, but we're working on starting to develop some kelp projects where we can use the kelp back into the hydrolysate and potentially into some of the other fish brew products, because we all know how kelp has a lot of benefits to plants when used correctly. So in a nutshell, that's been my 30-year journey. And fish brew is just one of the products we make. We do. Our main purpose for our farms is to grow fish.
All right, you left out a couple key details.
Probably.
First of all, you called me screaming at the very beginning of COVID saying, I just saw a bottle of fish shit for, what was it, $100 on a shelf? Yeah. And what I say to you, I've been telling you for years you're flushing gold, motherfucker.
True.
All right, and just to touch a little bit more, you have nematodes as well, which is another important, what we call super predator in the soil system. And let's touch a little bit on diatoms. So diatoms can not only generate energy through minerals in the water, which is generally how they do it, but they also have a chloroplast. So when you look at a live one, you can actually see the little photocell that's using sunlight. So these guys have two energy sources. So a very, very important thing to understand that they can thrive and survive in completely different environments, void of light and within light. A lot of biology can't do that. And secondly, their silica is biologically derived, which means that it's a lot more biologically active or available for microbes to eat or bacteria to consume. Why is that important? Well, if the bacteria consumes a dead diatom, it's going to store that silica in a plant available form within its body. As long as comes a protozoa, it eats that bacteria, and all it cares for is the carbon. So all of that other stuff is released. So recently, Keith sent me a paper talking about micronizing or nanoparticles of silica being used in sodic soil, so high in salt, which has always been a problem. If you have too much salt, it really shuts down a lot of the ability for that plant to function or even get close to producing the things that you're expecting it to do in agriculture. So to have that as another tool in the toolbox for conventional farming that you're trying to transition an existing field is huge. I mean, it's incredible that you have access to these types of tools, thanks to Keith. And another important thing to understand too is that we know for sure that fungi, bacteria, and plant roots all need oxygen. So in a compacted soil, how do you start? Where do you start? You go out and spray a bunch of product on top of the surface and it's not going to penetrate. It's not going to get down into the soil system. This is why you need cover crops, so that you can have that root aggregate or the soil aggregates to allow stuff to penetrate down in. And another thing that Keith has not mentioned here too is that I've had no problems turning a compacted traditional conventional ag field by using fish brew, but not aerobically stabilizing it 100%. In other words, what I'm looking for is a group called facultative anaerobes and anaerobic bacteria, which can live in no oxygen in compacted soils. By using them, it's kind of like sending in the Marines. You loosen everything up so that then when you do apply a full aerobic fish brew product, you are going to get incredible results because you've softened the ground up to accept this. So that's just some of the work that I've been doing over the last 12 years, whatever it's been, is understanding that, you know, you really need to start at a point, not just throw the kitchen sink at it, go about it methodically. So, and again, we have not spent time really getting into the weeds with taking Keith's product and stabilizing it only so far. But that this is something that can be done at home. As he said, you know, with the diatom levels, you know, this product has shelf stability. 3 years is incredible. No one's been able to do that, not without a pH suspension. So in the future, it'll be something that, you know, once he gets through this next year or so and really has all of these things under his belt, because he's been in build mode. I don't know how long, dude, 10 years?
Yeah, 7 years.
7. So he's going to catch up eventually. And when he does, then we'll go down that rabbit hole of figuring out how best to provide what I want to call the startup product that gets you there quicker. Now, that being said, it's not that this doesn't work, because it does. And we're going to have Kyle on here in another 45 minutes discussing the fact that he just applied it and it worked. And it worked to a level that is undeniable based on all the testing we did. So that being said, why don't we, Av, I don't know if you wanted to add anything or ask any questions to Keith about some of the things that he's been doing.
Yeah, the main question for me is, how do I get this in Canada? And it just seems like an amazing thing. I think of course, the diatoms to me is a great addition to this. We don't have anything out in the market that's comparable. And the other aspect that I think is amazing is the fact that there's all the fats and oils. A lot of hydrolysates remove the fats and oils, and so then you're thinking, maybe I should use a fish emulsion instead of hydrolysate. Well, then you kind of miss out on the NPK with the fish emulsion, and you get the fat. So you've got the best of both worlds, or you've created a new world with the diatom. So this is something that I think even the best regenerative agricultural grower will get some benefit out of, right? So, somebody who's been using conventional products, they're going to see a benefit if they use Neptune's Harvest. But not every regenerative organic farmer is going to see the same benefits. But with fishbrew, it sounds like we're actually going to get a little bit more. We're going to be getting the benefits of those fats and oils that are going to translate into the secondary, tertiary metabolites that we want in our tomatoes and in our cannabis and so on. So yeah, just excited. And it sounds like it shouldn't be that hard to get it registered in Canada. Especially if you've already done a lot of that analysis of the microbes that you want to list on the label.
So another thing, So another thing that's important to note is that there's no product on the market that has protozoa in it, let alone diatoms. There's nothing. The only thing you can buy in a jug is bacteria. We don't need bacteria. We all have plenty of bacteria in our soil. You'll get what's called a biostimulant reaction. When you throw that bacteria in your field, you will get a quick green up, but it's gone. It's used up within 24, 48 hours. This product stays in the soil. This product inoculates the soil. And yes, even regenerative organic farms will see an uptick from this product on a level that they will be impressed with. And again, you don't have to use it forever, but if you don't have what I want to call spring water, if you're using conventional water, you will have to continue to use it periodically as your numbers fall. And this goes back to something that drives me nuts about the industry. You guys don't test enough. How do you know what's going on in your system if you're not periodically doing chemistry tests as well as biological tests? Next week, we have a guest coming on, Andy. I'm very excited to have her on to talk about the value of biological testing. And Dr. Lane Ingham has rolled out what she calls the Soil Food Web lab techs. So we will have access to what I want to call next generation biological testing. Traditionally, it's just done through Earthfort, which is okay. It was a groundbreaking way to look at soil. But unfortunately, the way that testing protocol is based on taking the sample that you send them, heating it and adding foods to see what the potential is. Well, unfortunately, in nature, there's never that perfect environment for you to hit total potential. So yes, it was important to give us a baseline of what was there and what could happen with that biology. But it isn't the same as the new testing methodology, which gives you who's present now. And I think that's where the real value comes in this testing. And it's not expensive. It's very, very affordable for anybody. So sorry to go on a rant, but
no, but that's important, because we get calls from customers saying, what product should we use? Because we have three different, just to clear up. So we have four different waste products or soil conditioner, plant probiotics. We have the Bold product, which is comes out of Cape Cod, and that's the purest, rawest form of what Cape Cod is, our hatchery. It's got the diatoms, it's got amoebas, it's got rotifers, it's got I can't even remember. We have a test. If you go on our website, you can see the DNA testing we did. We have something like 3,500 different bacteria and 3,500 different fungi. We have protozoa. With the Bold product, I like to use it from seed for seeding starts. I actually start cannabis directly in soil. I don't start it with a paper towel moisture. We do it directly in soil with Bold, watering it once a week, and our germination rate is about 4 days earlier than any other method we've tried. It also is great for cloning. I clone cannabis plants. I've cloned tomato plants. Right now I'm cloning blueberries and fig plants that are taking really well to it. The Bold is an all-purpose probiotic. Use it for everything. Love the product. Off of that product, we have another product called Epic, which is the solids, the organics that have been removed down to 230 mesh size, about 60 micron. It's a great product for hydroponics. It's a great product for spraying your yard. To go back to the Bold product, it's also great for lawns. So if anybody out there isn't a cannabis grower but likes a really nice lush lawn, it's the same product that the Dallas Cowboys use on their practice fields. They've been using it for almost 3 years now. They were one of our first customers. And they've had great results. And Leighton can speak probably more on the results they've seen and why they've seen them than I can. But that product can be used on lawns as well as, and I have landscapers on Cape Cod that are using it on lawns. There's a lot of push here on Cape Cod, as there is in a lot of ocean coastal communities to eliminate commercial fertilizers because of the the pollution of nitrogen and phosphorus going into the waterways. Where with fishbrew, it all happens at the root of the plant. You don't get that residual wash away into the watershed when you use a product like Bold or Epic. So Epic Flow is the solids removed, great for hydroponics. I have people in aeroponics using it. We've done some foliar sprays with it and had some good results. Then we have a third product, which is also derived from our waste product, but it's from 2 different farms. It's the Rise and Thrive, which is very similar to the Bold product in that it has a percentage of Bold in it to get the diatoms in there. So we use Bold in all of our products to get the diatoms in there. Once we've brewed it for about 72 hours, the diatoms take into the brew and they repopulate. So the Rise and Thrive is very similar, higher on the bacterial than fungal. So typically used more for container growing. I've used it on figs. I've used it on orchards. Roses seem to like it a lot. The other product we have is Trifecta, which is one of Leighton's favorite ones. That comes out of our big farm, which is a warm water Barramundi farm. So there we're feeding about 5,000 pounds of feed a day. So we produce a lot of waste out of that farm. That waste is much different. It's warm water. We have a lot more sodium and chloride tolerant bacteria, which are also other salts, potassium, phosphate, and nitrate tolerant and consume those elements. Because the system typically runs at a lower than brackish water level, but we do add sodium chloride to the water to keep the chloride levels up in the system. And it's a recirculating system, so we reuse the water over and over again. A lot of different higher form life forms also that we don't see at the other farms, like things like bristleworms, larger rotifers. This product, Trifecta, blends all 3 farms together, why we called it Trifecta, blend of all 3 farms. And it is very biologically active. It was one of the harder of the products we have. It was one of the harder ones to get stable. Stable in the sense that it wasn't anaerobic. It wouldn't explode in a 260 gallon IBC on the road. It's very high in BOD when it comes out of our waste tanks. It's at about a 2 to 3% solid content. So it's not a real thick waste, but it does have some energy in there. So we actually have to it takes us about 5 to 7 days to brew that, to get it stable to ship it. And then once it's shipped, it's highly recommended that it's either aerated when you receive it or you apply it within 24 hours. And this is the product that Kyle used at his farm. And once again,
just for the audience, BOD stands for biological oxygen demand. So the audience understands.
Okay, yes. So there's a lot of biology going on in there that needs oxygen. So we actually have to kickstart it using liquid oxygen that's vaporized into gas to get it going. And then at about 72 hours, it kind of stabilizes, and we can just use aeration. All of my other products, I just used aeration to stabilize them. But because, like I said, this is also warm water, so it tends to be lower in oxygen, which is a little more of a challenge for brewing this stuff. But we've come up with a method. We've shipped it lots of different places. Lots of different people have used it. We definitely have a large volume of it. So it's one of our products that we only sell in bulk. We do not sell it in smaller containers. As much as people would like us to ship them a quart of trifecta, we can't do that. It's too volatile in a small bottle. UPS doesn't like it when a bottle explodes in their truck. So we try not to send trifecta. And then the hydrolysate is different. So the hydrolysate is separate. The hydrolysate is a hydrolysate. We do stabilize that pH, stabilize that. That's where we get the phosphates from. So there's not a lot of biological activity necessarily in our hydrolysate. There's some, but not compare. But when you use it as a part A, part B, so if you're a field grower and you put your hydrolysate down first, wait 3 to 5 days, and then apply your other soil amendment, whether it's trifecta, bold, or rise and thrive, you'll see the effects. And then you can feed it again, and then you can feed the NPK if your product happens to be corn. I have a couple cranberry farmers that are using the product this year. Last year, they would apply the rise and thrive. 3 days later, put the hydrolysate, and then do that again about 3 or 4 weeks later. So they did it multiple times in the year. And these were conventional cranberry farmers, and one of them saw a 15% increase. I think the number was about a 20% increase in quality. So with cranberries, it's important that there's different grades of cranberries, just like grapes. It was important to them that they saw an increase. And these were old bogs. I mean, these guys are 5-6 generation cranberry farmers. So these bogs have been hit hard with conventional fertilizers for years. And they saw results in year one, which I think is very impressive. Being a dirt farmer for the first half of my life, to see that kind of turnaround with the biology in fields that didn't have a lot of biology to begin with was pretty impressive. And we've seen it multiple times. Leighton can speak on one of the clients that just sent him an email that had compacted soil, a cotton field, I believe it was, sprayed it on it in Texas and saw results, pretty impressive results right away. So.
Oh, I could go on and on about it. All right. I mean, I've been using this product combined with my compost and some worm castings, and there isn't anything that isn't incredible difference between conventional and the use of these products. It's just nice.
When you say this product, are you referring to the trifecta or the rise and thrive, the bold?
All three of them. I've used everything he's produced. He made that filter so I could steal his shit.
Yeah.
So
we started with the bold. We started with the bold product.
Started with the bold, and then you guys, Keith got into this, man. He grabbed the bull by the horns and ran with it, and then started playing with some of these other components and adding them together to end results. But originally I was using Great Falls and a few other different companies in a similar situation. I would harvest the stuff from them, blend them together, aerobically stabilize them. So again, I've been doing this for a long, long time, and I'm just thrilled finally that the masses can have access to this stuff. And something else Keith forgot to mention on the hydrolysate is the oil. What type of oil? The omega-3s. So before we go too far down the rabbit hole, Keith, talk a little bit more about the fact of the levels that you have that other types of fishes don't provide.
So the barramundi are very high in omega-3 fat contents. There's some farms that produce barramundi that are similar to that of salmon. So they're very fat, high omega-3 fat content. We have not tested ours recently, but we know it's relatively high. We've been using the same feed formulation for many years. So there's nothing's changed within our feeding, what we've been feeding our fish. We have different diets that we use for different size fish. So depending on what's going into mix will depend on how much fat and oil there are. But generally, it's processing stuff that's coming out of our processing room or fish that don't make it to market. So they're usually large size fish, a lot of flesh. We actually remove the bones and the scales as part of the last process for two reasons. One, it makes it much easier to stabilize it. We can use a lot less phosphoric acid. Otherwise, you have all that calcium in the water that makes it more difficult. And we remove the bones after a certain period of time, and we remove the scales because the scales take for a very long time to break down, even though the scales have a lot of benefits in them. And that's a whole nother product we're starting to look at now is the stuff we removed. So looking at the bones and the scales, it's been interesting to see what it is. We have a couple different vermiculture people that are begging to use this stuff, wanting to try and see how it would work in their systems. So the fat content of the barramundi is very high. It's actually, I think, higher than my trout that come out of the farms. Very little of the trout go into this process, only because our trout farms are so much smaller than what our barramundi farm is. So, I mean, to give you our barramundi farm takes up about 2 acres of land, but there's about just shy of 3 million gallons of water inside the building that we recirculate through filtration on average once an hour. So 72 million gallons a day is recirculated. Just under 3 million gallons, and we only have 100 gallons of new water coming in a minute. Where my trout farm on Cape Cod has 350 gallons a minute for 75,000 fish. So much different farms, much different biology. But like Leighton says, it lends to a really great hydrolysate product. The upside to the hydrolysate, the upside and downside is that we can only produce so much because we grow the fish for the food market. We do not grow fish to make hydrolysate. So when mortalities and processing is slow, we don't make a lot of hydrolysate. That's a good thing for me. When we're making a lot of hydrolysate, that means that sometimes there's a problem at the farm. Right now, we're making between 180 and 250 gallons of hydrolysate a week available to the market. So it's kind of limited on what we can do. We have been talking with other aquaculture farms about taking their mortalities and doing something similar. And once again, if we do that, we will profile the fish, make sure that they're equivalent to what the barramundi is as far as fats and oils, because I think the fats and oils, at least for our product, is what makes it different than anything else on the market.
Absolutely. And I have played with composting fish scales and bones. Incredible results of calcium. So I'm glad to hear that you're playing with that. And Av, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were going to ask something?
I was going to ask you, Leighton, maybe just even to describe the process, whether you're a conventional farmer, and this might lead into more what Kyle's talking about, but let's assume you're a conventional farmer, you've been using soluble nutrients, and you want to jump to this. Do you just base this off a soil test? You still hit it with your soluble nutrients and then follow up? Or what's your process in taking a farmer from their soil test to using any of these products, whether they're soluble nutrient users or regenerative organic?
Oh, that's a great question, Av. So the interesting thing is that all nutrients can become into what I want to call an organic form. In other words, you used a lot of nitrogen. Some of that nitrogen is going to be mobile and so therefore wash away through the soil. Same with your main NPKs, right? They're both mobile, but they also bond together and form what I want to call an organic form of the compound or the element or molecule, I should say. Anyway, when it's in its organic form, the only thing that can take it out of that form is bacteria. And this is something that I wish Elaine got into deeper. She talks about bacteria, right? She talks about decomposers, but she doesn't talk about degraders and solubilizing. So one of the things that is in the water column of all aquaculture system are solubilizing bacteria. So what that means is that they can take that organic form and pull it apart and make it available. So all farms that have been in conventional ag for more than 10 years have an incredible pool of this organic form of nutrients. So we're going to see, you know, we've got some test data on what happened to Kyle's soil as far as what was needed or what was taken, but all the data points are pretty damn confusing. So we decided not to bring that up today, but I promise you next year at this time, we will have the data sets from 2 years, which will explain it a little bit more. Keith and I went back and forth about, well, why is this test the desired level of calcium this high, but after the application, it's lowered when we noticed we've pulled calcium out of the soil? And that's what I was trying to explain to Keith. It's like the reason the desired value went down is because there's more available in the soil because of the solubilizing bacteria. You didn't steal from the pool. You just made it more available. So that's where it gets a little confusing, and we're not going to get into the soil chemistry test today. We will get into the nutritional value, what happened to the corn versus nitrogen. We will get into the saturated paste test, which is really interesting. That's, again, about mobile nutrients. And lastly, we will get into the biology. What happened to the biology? And that kind of segues right into having Ken start to pull these up so that we can really suss out the information. So I don't know, Ken, if you ready to start popping stuff up on the screen? Well, there you go. I guess that answers that question. So this is the saturated paste test. You can see the desired levels. Like, we'll just start with pH. pH was low. Look where it is after the application. This is 11.4 is after harvest. All right, we have some other tests intermittently, but again, we're trying to give you the information that's important and not really bury you with this stuff. So again, now we drop down to soluble salts. As you can see, after harvest, they've gone down. Or excuse me, yes, soluble salts have gone down significantly, like almost 30%, right? Chloride went up a little. So this is also an interesting thing, that salt comes in a couple of different forms, or many different forms. But if you can pull sodium and push it in other directions, either by knocking it off the cation exchange site and therefore making it mobile, you can flush it out. And I believe that there's also some conversions that happen during degrading and solubilizing bacteria influence. So that's, again, you know, this stuff is so far ahead of the curve that we, team, you know, Kyle and Keith and Andy, we're all starting to just try to put this stuff together because no one has done any of this. I don't believe there's much information at this level, science backed anyway. So we're just out here, you know, boldly going where no one has gone before. So bear with us. We've reduced sulfur, which is great. We reduced phosphate, which isn't the end of the world. Calcium went down a little bit. So again, these numbers went down. But another thing that you have to take into consideration is that prior to the application of this product, this biological, all of that stuff was mobile. And what this test tells you is that we've decreased the amount of nutrients that are mobile. So where are they? They're tied up in the bacteria, immobile. So now that you have added value, that each one of those bacteria have a greater level of the things that the plant actually wants. This is another off topic. I'm working with a group doing anaerobic digestion. And we're seeing exactly the same results. The NPK test coming out of it, there's almost no nutrition whatsoever left in it. It's all tied up in the bacteria. So we're making bacteria superfood for plants. And then as you see down below the saturated paste, can you scroll up, Ken? There you go.
There we go.
All right. So as you can see here, now the percentage of calcium has changed. So we've solubilized some of that calcium, and that is now attached to the clay platelets or other sources of cation exchange. Cation exchange can happen on clay, silt to some degree, as well as organic matter. So that's important to know, that we're shifting this in the right direction. These numbers should be calcium at 75, magnesium at 17, and potassium at 8, and no sodium. And here again, we show that we've knocked some of those sodiums off of those cation exchanges. That would be almost 25% increase, which is huge. It's huge, because now you've opened up 25% more parking spots to hold the nutrients that you want, not the ones that you don't want. So this again is showing, incredible value from the biologicals that are coming from Keith's farm. Keith, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, then you look at the trace elements and you can see that they're actually being used up now. They're actually being used in the process. So you see boron, you see iron, both significantly dropped in the process. And when we go back and look at the nutrient density, you'll see where it went. It went into the plant.
Which is,
get
again,
washed away. It didn't disappear. It got absorbed by the plant like it should.
Yep. And
boron, I think, being one of the important ones, as well as, they're all important to the plant health. What we don't have is any measurement of silica. But maybe next year we can add that to the list.
That's a good question. I don't think I've ever seen a silica test unless I go to one of those super expensive labs, like not Logan, but Woods End is one of them that does all kinds of crazy tests.
We've had we had the Bold product tested for silica, and we found it at 1,525 parts per million.
And where did you get that tested?
Midwestern Labs.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Well, then we'll talk to Kyle about that off air or during the podcast. Yeah. So Ken, let's bounce over to.
I just want to draw a little attention to the magnesium. That high level of magnesium, it can be problematic. Just it's hard to get rid of. When you've got that magnesium, the more magnesium you have, the less magnesium uptake you have. So it's a really hard thing to get rid of. And really, one of the best ways of getting rid of it is increasing your calcium, and then some of your magnesium will dissipate out. But it's tough, and you might have actually seen some magnesium deficiencies in your plants, despite the fact you were well above what you really wanted.
Thank you, Av. That was important, and I meant to say something about that, because I told you what the values we want to see, but I didn't say anything about how to change that. So there are a lot of products available now. They're digested forms of calcium that you can use. One of them is Hortical. I love Hortical for what it does. I hate it for what it is. And what by that I mean, it's sold as like a hydroponic nutrient. The calcium value is only 5%. The rest of it is fucking water, right? Why can't they give us products that actually work at affordable prices? Now I'm just bitching, but I've had great success with using Hortical to knock off excess magnesium on one of the farms that one of the ranches I'm doing out here, and that'll be another whole one we can do. But that being said, thank you, Al, for bringing that up, because that really is an important thing. Is that relationship, that percentage? That's the first thing I do anytime I work with a client. It's like, okay, these percentages are so important for the plant. If you get these percentages at 75, 17, 8. Then I know I don't have to worry about that. I only have to worry about your pool. So that means the total amount of elements and minerals that are in the soil, because I got the solubilizers that will break them out and release them. So again, thank you for that. And actually, Keith has the product that does that. So yeah, let's bounce on to the nutrition. Okay, this is biology. So we'll go to biology. All right, so thank you. So I can actually see it.
I had to print off copies in front of me.
You're smart, Keith. You're way ahead of me. Today has been insane. All right, so what I want to start with is a bacterial biomass. Now, this is really important because when you have levels at 36,331, that's in a gram of soil. That's way too high. That's a bacterial dominant system, prone to anaerobic conditions because you have such BOD, biological oxygen demand, that soil is actually going to start collapsing. It's not going to go the right way. It's not going to aggregate. So as you see, we did the test before application of product on 6/20. On 6/23, which was 2 days after the application, look what happened to the bacteria. It dropped by almost 33%. Again, huge numbers, huge numbers. And then later on in the season, and then postseason. Now, postseason, they went back up, and there's a reason for that because now the plants are gone and things are changing in the soil system. So I'm going to leave that one alone for now. Keith, did you want to add anything to bacteria?
No. Let's jump
Av?
down.
All right. So the next thing to look at, which is really important, is the fungal biomass. All right. So we look at it as F to B ratio, and this kind of gives us guidelines to succession of the plant. In other words, for what we call a riparian system, you're going to have like 0.001 fungi to bacteria, very, very small amount. Redwood forest, upwards of 10,000, 100,000 to 1 bacteria, because that's a very old growth, old system. That's still functioning. So where should we be? Well, we should be right around 1 to 1 at this point. But fungi are very sensitive. They take time to really establish. There are no, please understand that in an F to B test, there is no mycorrhizae taken into consideration. And the fact that that field had been beat up and tilled means that there probably isn't any present anyway. But we will be changing that in this year. So that we know behind the scenes will be increasing that value. But right out of the gate after the test on 6/23, look where we hit. We almost got to that number, that magic number that we wanted to be, which is 1 to 1. Again, showing incredible value from this product. One application to get that is amazing. And then yes, we fell off as the season goes by, but you also have to understand that fungi go through seasonal changes as well. Sometimes they're really pushing growth, and other times they're backing off. So again, stay tuned on that one. Now this is where it gets really interesting. We're going to drop down to total beneficial protozoa. Before the test, we had 0. So that means we had 0 nutrient cycling go on. Nothing was happening in the soil. The bacteria were not being consumed. Therefore, all of the nutrients built up in them was not being released plant available. So nitrogen is required in that situation, unless you use fish brew. So after application, bam, almost 4 million. All right, that's a huge increase. Bounce over to 7.6, and that number says 0. Well, there's a reason why, and Andy's going to talk about that next week. So bottom line is, as you dilute the sample out, the chances of you finding a protozoa, a flagellate or amoeba, gets less and less and less. There's 2 reasons why. One, the specific gravity of those advanced organisms is different in water. So I believe the flagellates float, and I believe the amoebas sink. So unless you're testing the bottom of the vial or the top of the vial, you're definitely not going to get a good result in this testing methodology. And so I had long conversations with Andy, and she's like, you know what, Leighton, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, I can't control the total testing. Like, I can't skew the test by trying to take the sample off the top or off the bottom. I have to mix it and then take a sample out of the middle. And I agree with her that, testing protocols have to remain the same. We just have to understand that if you go back up to bacteria again have been reduced almost by 33%. So therefore, what that tells us is that it's the testing methodology that's not allowing us to see the actual organisms. Like she would tell me, she goes, Leighton, if I see one, we also have what's called standard deviation. I'm going to let her explain all this because it gets complicated. But bottom line is, by seeing that the bacterial is going down, and yes, we don't have a protozoa, it doesn't matter. We're going in the right direction. And now go ahead.
It may also be where he sampled, where this actual soil sample came from.
All right. So soil samples.
Now you're dealing on 7-8. He's dealing with a mature corn plant, and on 10-24, the corn's been harvested.
Right. So you're right, and again, you have to keep into mind that you're taking one drop off of 1 gram of soil. Where did that 1 gram of soil come from on 200 acres? So you have to understand that this is a guide, but it still provides important data to getting us information about where we're going and are we headed in the right direction. So we'll leave that there until Andy gets on. But again, we see a nice recovery in fall at harvest to half or a little bit less than half of what we had at application. So what that tells you is that this product is a bioinoculant. That is huge. Again, bioinoculant. It stays in the soil system. So over a course of time, he's not going to have to use it every time, or as long as his testing numbers are satisfied, he can skip a year, maybe 2, and then he'll have to apply again. So really, really important stuff as far as cost savings. Another interesting thing is Osomyces, which I can never pronounce. We saw a decrease in these. So these are potentially disease causing fungus in the soils. So to get a reduction to that point where we've cut it in 75% almost, that's huge. So again, we know if we put good guys in the soil and we create a heavy volume of good guys, that they will outcompete the bad guys. And we will be having Dr. James White on in the near future, and he will discuss some of the other things, the intricacies of having high beneficial fungi in relation to some of this disease-causing fungi. In some cases, they will actually turn the disease-causing fungi into a beneficial through. Well, I'll let him get into that because that's another whole deep comment.
Maybe I can just follow up there too. I think that's extremely important information for corn growers. Because fusarium is one of the biggest challenges. Many corn growers deal with fusarium, and that's a neomycete. And one of the things that it might be suggesting here is that the trifecta, the fish brew, was providing a lot of micronutrients, especially manganese, in a reduced form. And that's one of the main ways that fusarium kind of takes hold, right? Fusarium works really well in both soybean and corn by making manganese inaccessible. And if this fish brew is actually making manganese in a reduced form, allowing for plant uptake, that might be one of the reasons why you're seeing a reduction in oomycetes, which would be amazing.
So fusarium is one of those Osomyces that is converted into a beneficial in a high beneficial fungal system. Again, I'll let him speak on that. He's the guy that's done all the work. But yes, so it's a combination of both of these things, but huge benefit, correct?
Yeah, I think it ties into your previous comments in shows past of redox.
Yes, again, spot on. All right, what is this one now? Is this okay? Now we can bounce onto the nutritional one. This is the home run. This is the grand slam. And I'll let Keith speak on this one because Keith is actually very much a nutritionist when it comes to formulation for feeds. And Keith, why don't you speak about that friend of yours who, when you showed him these results, fell off his rocker?
Yeah, so I had a friend that was worked for a couple of different large nutritional companies for feed, for mostly for cattle. When he saw these numbers, what impressed him the most was the change in fat content. We saw a huge increase, 19% change in the fat content, and then the moisture content being 16% lower. And just so it's clear, this comparison, and Leighton, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Kyle's biological new method compared to his neighboring farm, that is a conventional farm.
Correct. But they're right next to each other. So you can't
weather the same, soil the same, just the method that they grew this year was one was a conventional farm and one was a biological method, we'll call it. And so these corn numbers were, these nutritional values are side by side comparison, and you can see, Kyle is higher in carbohydrate. Every single thing was higher except for the one thing you don't want higher, which is moisture content. And the moisture content was considerably lower, which means two things. One, he got it to market quicker because he also harvested, I believe, 2 or 3 weeks earlier than anyone else, which gave him the higher market price because early corn, fetches a higher price than corn that's harvested later. And you can see the different results. You can see the manganese, it was increased by 10.5% almost. Right across the board, down through the whole thing. Zinc was up 14%. I think the fat to me is probably, this being sold as a feed corn for animals, that's a really important one.
And I want to also highlight. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's something in the fish world that we look for, somewhere where we can get fat and energy for the fish. This would be a corn product I'd want in my fish feed.
So I was just going to comment on water. So reducing the water weight means that you can reduce the amount of food that you give your cow in this case. So why don't you speak just a little bit on that as well?
Say that? I missed part of it.
So by reducing the amount of water, which the animal doesn't need, it can drink if it needs water. So by reducing the amount of water in the feed itself, you are making it more powerful
you're making everything much more available.
Right.
They can eat less and get more nutrients.
Thank you.
On a feed corn that's already high in the other nutrient values. So this is more power packed than your typical corn. The other thing that was interesting, and I'd have to look at the other sheet, but he also saw even with the big decrease in moisture, his overall weight at harvest was I got to find the other sheet. It's in the cost analysis, but it was he had an increase in yield of 15 to 20%, something like that, Leighton.
Yes, I believe you're correct. I believe it was. It wasn't huge, but it still was enough. And I think there's another page that shows the cost savings, and I believe that's where you're going to see the increase in yield.
He gained 10 bushel per acre. So not only did he produce more ears of corn per stock of corn per stock, I believe, and Kyle can speak on this, but he sent me some pictures where he had 2 to 3 ears on last year, and this year he had 4 to 5 ears per stock.
Actually, last year he only had 1 ear. So typically they get 1 big ear and 1 little one. That's traditional. That's typical. He was getting a lot of 3s, some 4s, and even a couple of 5s. And he had people drive for 2 to 3 hours up to see because they didn't believe this. They've been in ag their whole life, 2nd generation, 3rd generation, never seen a corn plant with more than 2 ears. So he was quite the celebrity. I don't know how many groups he ran in and out of that field because people had to, they had to see it with their own eyes for them to believe it. I just pinged him because it's time for him to come on. So hopefully he hops on here any minute. But Ken, can you find the one with the cost savings and the so it was a report that Keith did, and I believe I sent it to you. It was one of that in that email.
Okay, well, it's going to be that one, or it's going to be that one. There you go, cost per acre.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, I'll let Keith speak on that one.
So these are numbers that we derived from what Kyle, the farmer, sent us. It's a table that he put together. We added a little bit more to it. We were trying to figure out what his, this is a net gain that you're looking at. So this isn't what he made off his corn. This is what he saved off his corn by using the biologicals. It was significant. You know, he had a cost savings from biologicals that he used was about 13,000, where the conventional he would have used 46,000. And this year there was an increase in nitrogen costs. And from what everybody's saying is this 2023 will be another increase in nitrogen costs. So that cost just keeps rising. He also saw cost per acre was much less, obviously, because his cost was his cost per bushel was 39 cents versus $1.46 conventional. He produced 10 extra bushels of corn with the biological versus his neighbor that didn't use it. And that's a 200 acre to 200 acre comparison. When you break it all down, his net gain was about $55,000 or $273 per acre by using the biological in year one. And the important thing is, and I think all three of us sitting here can agree, it's only year one. The biology hasn't completely taken yet.
And only one application. We recommend
only one
two.
application. And it was late. It was a late
Yeah.
application. The
Very
corn was
late.
already up when he applied it.
So, Leighton, do you want to speak a little, or Keith, do you want to speak a little bit? But when you say the application was biological versus conventional, does that mean that there was no other nutrients applied other than the fish brew and worm castings?
So we didn't even do worm castings. I didn't have time to make him the product, and we're going to get into that with him when he pops on.
Okay. Yeah.
But something else that before we go there, something else I want to point out. These are very conservative, conventional numbers. Like, to be honest with you, I think he'll speak on it today. That typically it's more like $2 to $2.40 cost per bushel, conventional. So again, we wanted to not like come out as outlandish with these kinds of crazy numbers. So, you know, this has been like very, how do I say, massaged in a way that does not like leave out the fact that some guys may only spend $1.46 per bushel, but in reality, in his area, it's higher. So I thought that was important to say. And then
the other thing I didn't point out was his reduce. He used, and Kyle will speak on this because I had to go back and ask him multiple times because make sure I heard him right. He reduced his pesticide use also by 1/3.
I don't think he used any this year.
That's why I wanted clarification on it. From what I understood, he and here he comes now.
Beautiful.
Show.
All right. Hey guys, we have some questions for you first before you give us the grand tour. So I'm going to open this up to, well, why don't you introduce you guys selves real quick? Give us a brief who you are, where you're at, and all that.
Kyle Moat in Beecher, Illinois. And I'll go ahead. I'm not good with this. My name's Rob Susie. I am just a mechanic. I'm here in Beecher also. I kind of put everything together, whatever Kyle says needs to be done.
So we had to do modification to his conventional ag equipment to get the biological in the field. So Robbie was instrumental and critical, working all kinds of crazy hours because everything was last minute last year, and they were able to pull it off. Did we have a reduction in biology? Possibly, because we didn't have time to trial the equipment. It was just go, go, go. So my gut feeling is we're going to be way more effective this year because we have the time to tweak the equipment that they did last year, as well as get out there when the corn is being planted and not. How many weeks did we apply after you planted it, Kyle?
I was on the fourth leaf, so maybe 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, so we lost a whole month, if not a little bit more in reality, because it was like July. That's when your corn is supposed to be what, knee high or more.
Yeah, we're behind just a little bit, but we're ripping everything apart, trying to redo everything, and it was just it was a fun year. There was a lot of learning experiences, but we got her.
Got her done. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start pounding you. Av, you want to ask the first one?
Well, first, I just want to, congratulate both of you. I love the jerry rigging of the spray equipment and all that. I think that's amazing. Yeah, I just wanted to know a little bit more about the fertility and the biological. Like, what did you do at time of seeding? Was there any conventional fertilizers put on at any time, or did you just go in with kind of biologicals?
So we were going to do conventional way. We're getting all set up for it and everything else. And then we seen the prices of nitrogen and everything. We're like, oh, nope. We flipped the switch. So that's when we started ripping everything apart and trying to get everything ready to rock and roll. But we used nothing conventional. It was all just biologicals. And as Leighton knows, Michael's solution, that's what we put on and everything. And then that was pretty much all we used. We used no bug control, no starters, no nothing.
Okay, that's phenomenal. So you did not even spraying BT. Amazing.
Nope. Yeah, that's all we used was just the fish brew. We led that on and we rocked that out.
And not even like a pre-seed fertilizer or anything. Just boom. Fourth leaf stage is the first time you did anything to the field.
Yeah, we're a little behind. It's never good when you're starting to pop the corn in half. So we're kind of worried about it and everything else, but it worked. We made it happen, and we applied it pretty good.
I want to backtrack. Just sorry, Leighton. I want to backtrack. Why did you believe Leighton could do this?
Good question.
He called me freaking the fuck out for a month anyway. Just, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? I'm like, trust me. You trust me. You worked with Michael. He told you didn't need this shit. I'm telling you too. You don't need this shit. But no, there was a lot of fear. But go ahead.
An awful lot of fear. Michael always told me, oh, you don't need nitrogen. You don't need nitrogen. It's the worst thing for you and everything else. And then he introduced me to Leighton, and he's doing the same preaching. It's like then it started hitting the brain a little bit. Maybe you should start thinking about something else, some other way, and something to help out the plants more than anything else. And then everything else in the soil. And yeah, that's when I started gaining a lot of trust. And then I was like, nah, screw it. We're jumping. So we jumped, and here we are.
All right, Keith, go ahead. You had something important.
Yeah, so we keep making the comment we don't need nitrogen. We need nitrogen. Plants need nitrogen. It's a matter of where they get their nitrogen from. So when you have the healthy soil, and Kyle has a buildup of nitrogen in his fields, like a lot of farmers that are conventional farmers have, the biology helps break it down. The biology helps consume it and make it more accessible to the plants. Our fish brew bowl product and the trifecta were tested by the Soil Food Web Lab, and it generates 250 pounds of nitrogen over a 90-day period of time.
Per acre. Per acre.
Based on the biology that's in the container that you receive. There is protozoa in there eating bacteria that are nitrogen fixers. All of our aquaculture facilities have bacteria in it that fix nitrogen. It's the whole premise behind a research system. Like Leighton was saying, you have certain bacteria that you actually try to grow. We actually boost some of our systems. We actually start them with ammonium chloride because we don't have fish in them yet. We have to give them some kind of ammonia to get the bacteria going. So we know that the varieties of the different nitrosomonas and nitrobacter, and then the other 3,500 other bacteria we have in our system, will convert and consume nitrogen and make it available to the plants when the protozoa consumes that carbohydrate and releases that nitrogen at the root of the plant. And I think that was the key to looking at our soil samples. Depending on where you take that soil sample, if you're not taking it at the root of the plant in July when that corn is growing, that's where your biology should be. It should be at the root of the plant and correct me if I'm wrong, because you guys are the scientists, but correct me if I'm wrong. Those plants are producing hormones and sugars, and that's where those bacteria and fungi want to be. So if you're not sampling at that root of the plant, you may not catch the protozoa because they're in a mode of feeding, which is right at the root of the plant, which is what you want, because then that's where they're excreting the nitrogen.
Again, that may be why we saw zero. And that was because of the soil sampling. And now that we've said that to Kyle, he'll be more concise in the way and method and where he's pulling those soil samples. Ab, you wanted to say something?
I was just wondering, Kyle, did you send Leighton a soil test last May? And what type of soil organic matter would you have had?
He had almost none. And again,
so Keith, where is this nitrogen coming from? Because you know, I'm picturing Illinois, corn soy country, and they probably have soil organic matter less than 2%, and Leighton makes it sound it might be less than 1%.
So bottom line is, inside of every living thing, I don't care whether it's a bacteria or a super predator, there is what's called a C to N ratio. It's higher in organisms that are more advanced, and it's lower in organisms that are less advanced. So in a bacteria, there is one carbon and there's one nitrogen, and then there's what's called the pantry. The pantry is in the inner cell, in with the nuclei and the oreganellos, and in there are all of the other potential elements from the periodic table, depending on where you are. Hopefully not any radioactive stuff. But anyway, that pantry is what I was talking about earlier, the superfood. So if you give this bacteria exposed to all of these, solubilizing bacteria, the ones that can solubilize. Not all of them can solubilize everything. Some of them are specialized, but that's where diversity comes in. So you have a lot of these solubilizing bacteria, which you get in an aquaculture system. They're going to pull that raw minerals or elements up into their body. So when the protozoa eats it, the protozoa can't hold on to that nitrogen because it'll explode if it takes it. So it's pooping out that nitrogen. That's where the 200 pounds per acre over a 90-day period comes into play. The nitrogen's already there. It's locked up in the bacteria. So every bacteria consumed is one tiny part of nitrogen, free.
And our product's coming with those bacteria in it. So it's not like they're finding the bacteria. It has to be in the soil. And as we saw, Kyle had a high level of bacteria in his soil that were locking up potentially some of that nitrogen. Without the protozoa there to release it.
Yeah, it's tied up. And same with the nematodes too. We didn't get a lot of nematodes this year because, again, we didn't use all three products. This year, he's going to have compost. He's already got the worm castings, and he's going to be buying a ton of trifecta from Keith. So we're really going to have what I want to call a model year in year two. We're going to have 200 acres that's already been prepped. We still had a 500,000 or almost a little under half of what we put in soil play last year. It's already there, ready to go. And we have a brand new 300 acres that has not been touched. So again, just keep up with us. This time next year, we're going to provide a shit ton more data on how well this worked, because we are going to have the time to really do it the way we want to do it. And so were there any other good questions? I mean, one of the other questions, Kyle, that came up was, did you use any pesticides at all?
No.
All right.
Oh,
Bam.
not at all. Okay.
No.
And that's huge.
I
So
usually side dress that on. Feed around a corn planter. I use nothing.
So you can see our numbers were super conservative. Kyle, what did you calculate that most traditional ag farmers use or cost per bushel? Was it $2 to $2.40 per bushel, or was I crazy when you said that?
Yeah, it was something like that. And then ours was, I think, what?
39 cents.
Yeah, it was like 20 something, 30 something.
Yeah. So the conventional number right there is low. It's very low. And if nitrogen goes up this year, it could be as high as $3 a bushel for nitrogen grow. And so he's going to spend more money this year because we are doing some additional nutrients. Because our goal is to hit how many bushel per acre?
We've seen some things out there. Maybe we can pull. Maybe we really want to hit 3, but they're capable of. I think some plants are capable of 600. But we just want to try and hit our 300 mark, and then. But 600, if we can knock that out of the park, we'll knock it out of the park.
So think about that, Av.
What in your planting density? Do you know how much? What?
It's typical spacing and planting. Kyle, what is your spacing and your seeds per? However you guys talk that language.
Every 6 inches, and then usually 1 to 2 inch, and then. We got the compactors in the back, just a little bit of pressure we put on those, and then that's all we do. It's just normal for everyone. I mean, we're all about the same as everyone else.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep it even with the other farmer to kind of figure out what we got going on. So that's why we're trying to keep all of our levels and everything the same as him, so we can really test it out.
What are you planting in this same field this year?
That field's going to have beans.
Beans, okay.
And right now it's got cover crop on it. And so we're going to be crimping and everything else. And so we can crimp it in, and then we're going to be putting our beans in. And then the other fields, we're going to be applying fish brew and everything else to it. So that's another 300 acres we're going to be trying this year. So we'll have 500 acres total.
And Keith, I want you to explain that you do have mycorrhizae spores in your products.
We do on all of our products. I think the highest level is in the bold. That's why, like I said earlier, that's why we use that for seed start.
Is that something you add or you found?
No.
It's in there.
And again, something that's really, really important to understand is these organisms are in vivo. They're not grown in vitro. So when you grow something in vitro, you're growing it in the perfect environment, perfect light, perfect temperature, perfect amount of food. You take that and throw it out into a hostile environment, how well is it going to take? Right? These are grown in nature, so they're tough as the day is long. Think about this. You take a ghetto kid, or you take a rich kid who's been spoon-fed and hadn't done anything his whole life, and you throw him in a ghetto. How long is he going to last? That's your in vitro. That's your in vitro organisms. I don't care if they're bacteria, mycorrhizae, whatever. You're going to throw that kid into the ghetto, and he ain't going to have a chance. Now, you take the ghetto kid, the in vivo product, and you throw him into a rich building or a rich mansion with all those access to all those things. How well is he going to do? Right? He's going to kill it. So his mycorrhizae spores are grown in nature. So they're ready. They're obviously one of the more aggressive forms of mycorrhizae that will colonize. And we've had successful colonization using this when I didn't use microapply or any of the other products out there. So I know it works. And so originally we talked to Kyle about adding BioRadis to his suite of products to apply this year. But I'm going to back off and say, let's hold off this year and let's use 2 applications on both sets of fields. And then we're going to do root samples at just before harvest. We're going to send them off to microroots and see if we have colonization. And if that's the case and he continues to cover crop, that mycorrhizae is just going to spread like wildfire.
So how late did you get that cover crop in? Like
right after we harvested, we tried to put it in as soon as, and we just did we spread it out. We didn't even do nothing in the soil. Yep.
And Leighton, would you recommend another application just prior or at the same time as you're putting the cover crop down?
So in his case, no. But something really important to notice is, Kyle, how early did you harvest compared to the other farmers?
It was dry. Almost 3 weeks?
We were probably out 2 weeks before most
Yeah.
of all the other farmers that planted the same day or week as we did.
And we were pulling heavier test weight, and it was super dry as we pulled it out. So we were low on moisture, and we were getting some heavy test weights.
So think about that. So again, huge value. And the fact that he could pull 2 to 3 weeks early meant he had 2 to 3 weeks early for that cover crop to get established.
Mm-hmm.
What did you use for a cover crop?
Rye.
Okay.
Sugar rye.
Which is a mycorrhizae host. So again, these are really easy ways for farmers to just save a ton of money, a ton of labor, and have incredibly increased yields and better food or better nutrition for whatever's consuming it. It's almost too good to be true, right?
Yeah, I actually think your cost of production is going to go down this year because your yields are actually going to go up higher, right?
Yep.
So with the added amendments and added nutrients, the double application, I think your cost of production will actually go down.
It will.
You'll have even better yields.
And with the stuff that he's using this year, some of the new products, they're almost space age. And we're not going to get into that. We're going to do another show with him and perhaps Brad, where we talk about some of these new products that are coming out and being available commercially to farmers that are really going to show a difference. But we're going to wait. Let's get through this season. He's going to have a tremendous amount of work to do. So we're not going to bog down with trying to get into the weeds, so to say, with Brad and some of these other things. But we're testing them this year, and we'll have more results next year for sure, or the end of the season. Keith, did you have anything else you wanted to ask Kyle or Robbie?
So this year, when you apply it, how are you applying it different than last year?
One field is going to be all sprayer. We're not going to use a side dresser. And then the other ones are going to have the side dresser still because we just don't want to disc it up too much. So just the planter, we're just going to have go through, and that's as much as it's going to go, much disc as it's going to hit that field. So we're going to try and spray everything on that field. And then the other ones, we're going to get the ground ready and apply it probably as soon as it comes up so we can see our rows. And then we're going to hit it with the side dresser so we can get a little bit better, unless you want to touch base on that sprayer. If we can get the sprayer going good enough with the other field, then we're going to toss it on the corn too. But the pumps and everything are just different.
We're going to try getting away from using that side dress applicator bar because we're putting it in, we're knifing into the ground 2-3 inches. So we're going to try taking the broadcast sprayer and putting hoses that basically drag the ground and will just drip right onto the top of the soil. We're not disturbing the soil. We're not trying to just tear everything up. And that picture there, that little knife will go down 2 inches into the ground. The tube on the back will apply it into the little trench that it creates. So instead of having that knife going into the ground, disturbing everything, we can just run that tube along the top of the ground, and they actually have a Y fitting that goes onto the end, and we'll kind of
either way
push it towards the roots of the corn, or more than likely the corn.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Kyle, did you do any soil disturbance after the corn was up?
Yeah.
Like cultivating or anything?
Just a side dress.
Just with that bar.
Just the bar. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Just right down the center of that 30-inch spaced row.
Okay.
This year we're trying to stay away from it if we can figure it out fast enough.
Right.
We're tinkering with it now, trying to get it all ready to rock and roll. It's just hard to hit. Was it 60 foot? I think the 60-foot boom, we're trying to get all the pressures to really push out that far. You can get bigger and bigger pumps, but we're getting it.
So Leighton mentioned that, and I say this, I think it's a Joel Salatin line, sometimes you have to believe it to see it. And you had a lot of farmers coming by. What did you notice about the corn that looked different than corn in previous years?
The colors, it was a different kind of green. The hairs on the leaves, those were, I want to say, you think an eighth bigger? That's probably an eighth bigger on the hairs on the leaves. And when you walk into the field, I don't know if you ever ran into a field when you're a kid or something like that, and you scrape your arms and everything, it started to itch, and you just couldn't breathe after a while on a hot day.
Yeah.
Now, the biological one, you go in there, and we noticed when it was scraping our skin and everything else, getting us, and it didn't itch, and then you can breathe real good in there. You didn't get that. You weren't gasping for air all the time when you're further in that field on a hot day.
Because the crops, the biologicals keep everything cooler, keeps a microclimate down in that soil, and you're not breathing the toxins that are being released from pesticides and synthetic fertilizers that he's talking about gasping. And I was ripped up when I was a kid running into the field to pick corn because our grandparents were like, all right, kids, go get the corn and peel it on the way back because they wanted it as fresh off the stalk as they could get. So us kids would get all ripped up and fucking itchy as hell just so our grandparents could have corn literally off the stalk, ran to their fucking kitchen and thrown in the hot water. So again, think about these advantages.
Yeah. Did you find the leaves were a little waxier?
They had like the hairs on the leaves?
Yeah.
So they had a little shine to it and a different green, and those little hairs were just so much longer than a regular conventional way.
Right.
That was the first thing that just popped up. I mean, you can see them as you're walking in the field before, and then if you go to a regular field, they're hardly there. In some spots, it's not even all the way up to stalks, and it was producing everywhere.
Be interesting now. Have you been able to get out to the field, or is it covered in snow? Have the stalks over been broken down?
They're starting to break down and do their thing. It's been snowing. Well, right now we're getting a heck of a rainstorm right now, so I think we got about 3 inches already. So it's really pounding outside.
Okay.
Kyle, what about the hairs on the top of the corn? The silk?
The silk? Yeah, it was. So I'm used to like really long hairs, and like we got like a few 14s and 13s and stuff like that, but a lot of them were actually shorter, and we had more around. So it produced a fatter ear because everyone was like driving past, they would make fun of you and everything else until they went out to the field and they looked at it. They seen it was the same numbers. Yeah. But that's a big difference too. Like he said, the silks, there are so many silks everywhere, and we look at it. You're like, the ear's so small. How can it have so many silks? And then you go out there and actually count the numbers. Then we're busting even. But yeah, I think the other way we're gonna try and do a little bit more spraying is we got like a spray drone. That's the other technique that we had to spray. That way we just on the ground.
So Michael is a gentleman that was unfortunately murdered a couple years ago. I won't get into the details. He was a love, man. He was a beautiful soul. He came up with a solution, which I don't know how he came up with. It's kind of crazy. You have 7 parts. You have to mix them together in exactly the right order, or it falls out of solution. If you do it correctly, it's a superfood, and you don't need a lot of it, and you apply it fully. So, Kyle, why don't we begin the tour? Is the drone inside?
Yeah, we got it inside here.
All right, why don't you take your laptop and show us the drone and talk a little bit about what you saw as far as plant reaction when you applied Michael's solution.
Okay. Well, first thing with Michael's solution, I just want to touch base. We tried it on tomatoes, and we would have regular and then we'd just take a mister and spray it on there. And it budded, I think, 45 buds, and just the regular generic had 15. So that's when he started to figure out that there's something there. And then that's when we got to this drone, and I'll show you and that's why I use Michael's solution like all the time, because I'm a firm believer. I've seen it with my eyes. It works like nothing other.
How many applications did you do last year of Michael's solution?
2 with the drone, and then 1 with the
Broadcast sprayer.
Yeah, broadcast. Yeah.
Yeah, we did one right about mid-July, and then about the last time we get out into the fields with a tractor, and then we went back out with the drone once the corn got too tall to get out there with the tractor.
Mm-hmm. And that expense is in his expense sheet. The price of this stuff is super cheap because you're buying it in bulk. Again, it's not being prepared for you by a fertilizer company. You're buying the inputs, so they're super fucking cheap. All right, go ahead, Kyle.
I need this thing. I don't know how to pop that thing off. All right, that's the little guy we got. We're gonna try and get the bigger one. We both took our FFA licenses and everything else, but we wanted to test it out before we really got at it. So this only did. How much is this one? You can talk on it.
Yeah, it's the smallest one that they released or got out on the market right now. It's very low output. It's very slow. I want to say we were spraying about 16 feet per second. It was calling. Bigger one, I believe we can spray up to like 24 feet per second, if I remember right. It's almost double to triple the carrying capacity with the liquid. In this one field, it was down and back. We were landing, refilling the tank, and then back out. So the bigger one, we're able to go out for twice as long. Bigger batteries, bigger tank. It's just going to be an all-around better system to get back out when the corn gets too tall and we can't get out there with the big broadcast sprayer.
And again, this is for foliar applications. And we all know foliar is saving the plant ATP, which is its energy currency. So that means it doesn't have to leak out exudates to grow more bacteria, to have then uptake the nutrients that the bacteria is released. So again, you're going to get more plant production because it's not going to be wasting as much energy supporting the biologicals down below. So huge advantage. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that drone or application methods, Robbie?
The other nice thing we've noticed with this drone is the downforce that it has between the 4 propellers. It will take and spread the corn apart, the corn stalks apart, and you can see the mist of it. It actually like flows down into the corn and just circles. So it's not just hitting the top of the leaves, it's hitting the bottom of the leaves. It's hitting, the whole stalk everywhere, top and bottom of the leaves. It's getting down to the ground. We made a test pass with just some water. Kyle walked out in the field and he said he could feel a nice strong mist coming off of it. We were flying, I want to say about 2 foot above the corn. I want to say we had about 7 feet off the ground throughout the field, and it just the downforce that thing has pushing that liquids down. It was just crazy to watch. Right in the sunsets, you could just see that mist just circle around it, and then you just watch this stuff settle down in, and the coverage was amazing we had with it.
So again, the advantage of foliar spraying, where you're getting the bottom of the leaves and the tops. If anyone's tried to foliar feed, it's a nightmare trying to get on the bottom side of the leaves. So that's, again, the power of this piece of equipment. And Michael was the one that told Kyle he could do this. And so, again, he was a huge inspiration in Kyle's willingness to jump off the cliff and pray to God the water was deep enough. Why aren't you laughing, Kyle?
No, you can hear me. That was a long jump. I tell you what, I was praying there was water.
All right, so let's bounce on. Why don't you spin it around and show the audience the next round of equipment that you've installed.
Again.
So that top sink is going to be used as a it's a stainless steel sink with a wooden box with a stainless steel screen and a concrete vibrator. And what he's going to be doing is putting compost in there and washing it through the screen to get it ready to be put into the next level of machine. Below it is what's called a gravity settler. So there's a thing that's called remineralization, and Keith can speak on days on this. What happens when you have high biological demand is that it's stripping all of these components, and it actually reforms biological sand, clay. I haven't seen silt, but I've seen sand and clay. This is a prime example of this is when I would throw feed into my fish tank, and then I'd settle out the solids into making my own product like Keith's. I'd always get a tremendous amount of sand in there. And it took me a while to figure out, well, wait a minute, where's the sand coming from? I'm only putting in water and feed, and there is no sand in my feed. So it's called a biogeochemical reaction. And it's complex as all hell. We don't have a lot of science on it. It's happening, nano time. So it's, again, super complex. Don't have the instruments yet available to really suss out why it's happening and whether that sand, because it was biogeochemically created, perhaps is more available in silica as well. But, as things suss out, we'll get more and more information. So it was important to settle out any of the grit so that when it goes up into the machine process, you're only getting biologicals out. You're only getting organic matter that's coated with these bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, et cetera, and spores. That's another thing that Keith didn't say. He's got a tremendous amount of spores in his products as well. So that's another huge advantage. So Kyle, why don't you climb up that ladder if you can, and let's take a shot at inside the kettle. So this kettle was a yogurt maker that I had the manufacturer reconfigure. I had him put a cone bottom on it and put 2 motors instead of 1. It was originally, again, for making yogurt. So this does not look anything like what a yogurt maker would look like. So as you can see, I have 2 different motors, 2 different sizes, 2 different horsepowers. The bigger motor is driving the sweeps on the outside. So you can see that there's a bar that goes around the outside and sweeps everything, pushing it in. And it's also sweeping the bottom cone and throwing stuff up. Then he's got an impeller, actually 2 impellers in there. And those are spinning against each other. And then you've got a huge air coming up the center of the cone bottom as well. So you have multiple actions of what I want to call soft colliding. So it's hard to see in this picture, but the top impeller is about, what do you say, 16 inches above the lower one, Kyle?
Yes.
So you have about 16 inches difference between the 2 impellers, which are opposed, one spinning one way, the other spinning the other way. So this creates what's called soft collision. So soft collision is like if we were in a pool and I tried to punch you underwater, you would feel me punch you, but it wouldn't hurt. So this is the concept on how to brush off all of the humics, fulvics, and living organisms off of the organic matter, so you can get them into suspension. And then when you're suspending them with this much oxygen, they'll recolonize the tiny little particles, and now you've put them in a condominium. So you've given them food, water, and cover so that when you do apply them, the colonization rate goes through the roof compared to just a liquid. So there's a company called GOT Brewers. They're pretty well famous. Elaine backed them for a number of years. And they basically, you blow air into a bag of compost that's underwater. And And basically what comes out of that is what we call dirty water, where with this machine, you're making chocolate water. Like you hold this water up and you can just see it's full of turbidity. So each one of those tiny little particles is gives you a huge advantage of colonization over just throwing the organisms into a hostile environment. So from here, he's going to gravity feed back to another screen, which we're going to determine what size he actually uses based on the equipment that Robbie's making right now. So that this is a vibrating screen. And the reason why it's so important to vibrate this material, first of all, it helps suspend or helps to pull out any things that are too big that you don't want. They'll get trapped on top of the screen. But there's this interesting thing called resonance. So when you find the right frequency and these concrete, flip that lid back so you can see the vibrator, the rubber. So these vibrators are made for the concrete industry. This one's actually made for something different, but similar to concrete. So it bolts the outside of a form so that you get all the air out of the concrete. They come with variable frequency drives, VFDs, and that allows you to increase the vibration or decrease the vibration. That's that little gray box right there at the bottom of your right screen. So what I found over the years is you can find this place called resonance, where all of a sudden the water just falls through the screen. So basically, remember, this is clumps of like, mud. And so how do you get the water out of it? Well, this is why I used this technique instead of other methods that I tried in the beginning, was because I wanted to get the water out of it as quick as possible with the least amount of work. But what I didn't realize I was causing was I was stimulating the electrons and the protons. And what that does is that magnetically charges these tiny little friggin' particulate so that when they hit the soil, when they hit the sand, silt, and clay, they pull them together and bond into instant microaggregates. And the only way I discovered that was when I was experimenting with the product in early development phases. I noticed that, I did all this work at night and I came in the next day and it was all clotted together. And I'm like, how did that happen? And then, so I started playing with throwing sand and silt and clay on top of it. And what I noticed was it aggregated. So I give the benefit, or I give a lot of the benefit to the magnetism, but also by creating those tiny little pockets, now I'm protecting the bacteria or that little clod, that little condominium, so that it can produce even more biofilm to create even more colonies to expand and make bigger aggregates. So that was a side benefit of using vibration as a method to dewatering compost after it had been immersed. So there's got to be some questions. So fire away. And Kyle, why don't you go make yourself comfortable down there? Be careful getting down.
All I'm thinking is that I'm glad Illinois is legal for cannabis, because I think you can make some amazing bubble hash with that operation you got going there.
It's funny, I was blessed enough at the second annual or the second regenerative cannabis conference that I co-hosted or co-founded to be there with Frenchie Cannoli. And this was up in Humboldt. And Frenchie needed a ride to San Francisco. And someone told him, oh, Leighton's leaving. He's got to fly out early in the morning. So Frenchie came up to me and said, hey, can you give me a lift to San Fran? I'm like, yeah, no problem, brother. Absolutely. So I got to smoke fucking hash with Frenchie driving down from the mountains, 3.5 hours. And we talked like schoolgirls. And so he was like, I was really, incredibly blown away by this technique you talk about making compost. And I go, yeah, it's funny, dude. I got nicknamed the compost hash guy, literally. And so I explained to him my vessel and how I had created it. He's like, oh my fucking God, I could make bubble hash with that. And so I'm pretty sure that he used this concept to create that machine that he and his beautiful love, Mrs. Cannoli or Madam Cannoli.
Jennifer.
No, it's not Jennifer, dude. It's Kimberly.
Kimberly. Sorry.
Anyway, Frenchie and I had a fucking hoot. We were laughing our asses off. talking about this shit and a lot of other things. But you're absolutely right. That could be easily converted into a hash making machine.
Yeah, it's amazing.
All right, we got 15 minutes. Ken, is there any questions or?
I do have two. The first one is
okay. Great. I'll follow up later with Keith.
okay. Yeah, because we lost your audio there for a second, Av. So, have you thought about seed drilling along with fish brew in the hole right when the seed is planted? I listened to a corn grower saying he did it with pig manure, and it was great as a starter.
So I don't believe Kyle has a seed drill yet. Do you, Kyle? Do you have the drill rig?
We got a corn planter that has the starter fertilizer tanks on there. We have talked about it and considered doing something like that, putting this in as a starter, just so it hits that seed, gets dripped right on top of that seed, and it gets right to it and starts activating. But there's been talk about maybe upgrading different planter here next year or so. So we're considering if it's going to be worth putting it on to the current one or just hanging tight and doing something like that until get a bigger, newer model planter.
All right. So did you hear? You guys weren't present when Keith talked about his direct planting. So I would recommend that you follow Keith's protocols and use bold flow. I know it's more money, but he's getting what. Keith, talk about your generation rates.
So we started cannabis. We typically, a lot of the cannabis growers start their cannabis on paper towels with water. We started our cannabis directly in soil with the bold flow, and it germinated much quicker. And we've done it with other seeds too. I've had farmers use watermelon seed. They do a pre-soak. I had a farmer in New York that used it for root drenching. So it definitely has a lot of benefit because of the mycorrhizae that's in it, like Leighton spoke about earlier. It's going to help with your seed germination quicker. I don't know if I was just thinking as we were talking, I'd like to get some corn seed and actually do a soak and try it before you get to your season. So I may do that. It may not be the same variety of corn you have, but I'm going to try some corn seed and see if I do a pre-soak before you plant it and see how much quicker it might germinate.
Can you do a side-by-side with that, Keith?
I can do a side-by-side.
Sweet. And then we'll update the audience after you get that time.
Yeah, I can probably start it next week.
Sweet.
Kyle,
We have a 3,000 square foot greenhouse. We can do some soil trials in it.
Kyle, do you use treated seed?
Beans, no. And the corn was it was not last year. There was a triple. Some people have been saying do a triple stack and everything else for all the, but I'm trying to stay with just regular just regular corn with no treated.
Kyle, were you going to have the seed coated in that powder from Brad?
Yeah.
So what is that powder?
It's a bio. I don't have it on me. What it all is, tell you the truth. I don't.
It's an endophyte, correct?
Was it? Okay.
Endophyte, isn't it that endophytic bacteria?
Yeah. I don't know the name of it or anything like that, but that's what we're going to be. Instead of all the triple stacks and everything else, I'm going to try and put all that onto it, all the endophytes and everything else. It's supposed to come in a powder. You're supposed to toss it in the bin with it. So we're going to try it that way.
So this, again, is one of those products that I'd mentioned earlier that we are going to be rolling out and really playing hard with. They have been proven. This isn't something brand new, but it's relatively new to large scale. In other words, they've scaled up to a point where they can produce this product for enough farmers to actually, do huge acre plottage. So again, not brand new. The science is relatively old, but the product development took time, et cetera. You know how things are in this day and age.
And then our next question from Lucas is, can we ask if Bold Flow is a product that has more nitrogen fixing microbes, or if it's okay to be under in flower or used in flower later on?
As long as you're not foliarly spraying it, Lucas, you'll be fine.
Yes.
The only thing is I would never spray anything even a week after, especially these products. I would never spray them a week after flower began, because you are going to fail your biologicals if you're testing. If you're not, you're probably all right. None of this biology is going to hurt you. Ken seen me drink it live on TV or live on camera. I get it in my eyes, my ears, all the time. I'm soaked in the shit, and I'm still here. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about smoking it. It's not going to hurt you. It's not like you're smoking fungal spores or anything, or any pathogens. But again, I'd be really leery of spraying it anytime after 1 week into flower.
Right. But you can use it through flower and cannabis. I've used a Bold product from seed start all the way through to harvest.
Yep. And that's using it as a soil drench.
Yes. Once a week.
Yep.
We've actually tested all the products before we actually put them in the bottle. I've been using the product longer than it's been on market.
And you know, I mean, some people swear that if you use a lot of like fish emulsion, fish hydrolysate, it carries through in the flower. You've never experienced that, Keith?
Well, so now that's different. That's the hydrolysate. The Bold is the fish excretion, different product.
Okay.
So the hydrolysate, I generally don't use it during the flowering stage.
Oh, you know, okay.
No.
I like to put a lot of fats in there early in flower. I like fats and oils for the lactobacilli, hopefully, that are there. But you worry that flavor might carry through?
Well, no, I don't worry. I just didn't do it. This year we have some cannabis plants we started, and that's one of the trials is trialing our hydrolysate against actually a fish emulsion to see it, and we're going to carry it right through the whole stage. So,
I remember people. He's not a cannabis farmer. Keith is a fish farmer.
I'm a fish farmer that grows plants when I have time. I have between my 3 farms, I have about 1.2 million fish, and I have about 7 million oysters. So they keep me pretty busy. All this other stuff I do at night. And I have great staff at my farm, so they help a lot with this.
You know, and again, I think that here we haven't talked about those minerals yet. Lil, will you read that real quick? The benefits of those 3 minerals that we had a huge uptake in, huge increase with the product.
Okay, I think she's upstairs, so she'll have to come down first.
All right, sounds good. I'll talk for another minute. So, Av, to really get this into your head, right? For years, since that first regen conference I did, I met a lot of regenerative organic farmers, and I would smoke their cannabis, and it would taste great. It didn't get all resiny and nasty at the end of the joint. The flavor were amazing. The punch was over the top. And then I would smoke somebody's synthetic cultivar, the same cultivar, fucking night and day. The shit burned the back of my throat. I cough like hell. The joint, after you've smoked maybe not even a third of it, starts clogging up and getting nasty tasting. So we know the benefits of using biology and regenerative practices to increase plant potential. Well, we proved it today with corn, or not today, this year with the corn. We've got those minerals. We got better, less water, higher energy, energy, fat, and carbohydrates. So it's got to transfer over to the cannabis plant.
And I think it'll also transfer to animal preference. You know, it'd be interesting to be able to put that corn in front of a dairy cow and put a different corn in front of a dairy cow, and you'll just notice that she will preferentially choose various corns, right? They do it all the time. You've seen the studies with pigs on GM corn versus conventionally bred corn, and they will pick the conventionally bred corn all the time. So I think that's the next level, right? And even the data that we're collecting on this is not necessarily the data that even William Albrecht collected when he did his work around looking at soil fertility in pastures, right? It was always going to not only looking at that alfalfa or the grass, but it was actually looking at not even the milk, but the calf, the bone structure in the calf that she was producing. So that's where it'll be great to have someone like Dan Kittredge come in from the Bionutrient Food Association and be able to do some analysis on Kyle and Robbie's corn and just show that the Brix level or the nutritional density of the corn is going to be phenomenally better.
Go ahead.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Lil.
Okay, so on a moment's notice, I was able to get some information here. 12 evidence-based health benefits of magnesium for humans, crucial for brain and body, including your heart, blood sugar levels, and mood. There is involved in hundreds of biochemical reactions in your body. Every cell in your body contains this mineral and needs it to function. About 60% of the magnesium in your body occurs in bone, while the rest is in muscles, soft tissues, and fluids, including blood. One of its main roles is to act as a cofactor, a helper molecule in the biochemical reactions continuously performed by enzymes. It's involved in more than 600 reactions in your body, including energy creation, protein formation, gene maintenance, muscle movements, nervous system regulation. It may boost exercise performance, may combat depression, may promote heart health, boasts anti-inflammatory benefits, may help prevent migraine attacks, may improve PMS systems, may promote bone health, may support better sleep, may help reduce anxiety, safe and widely available. Rich food sources, pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, spinach, almonds, cashews, black beans, edamame, peanut butter, brown rice, salmon, halibut, and avocado. Let me just see here.
Considering you only gave her not very long, Leighton, she's pretty thorough, eh?
Oh, Jesus. Yes, she is. And that was magnesium, not manganese.
That was magnesium. Along with that, let me see here. The one thing that's important to know, whether it is for your own consumption, animals' consumption, or plant, balance is key. It can be toxic in high levels, and it can be important when it comes to low levels to increase your supply. Fights inflammation, diabetes, rich sources, like I said, whole grains, nuts and seeds, dark leafy greens, soy products.
And that's all magnesium.
Now, when it comes to animals, it helps prevent and treat grass tetany in beef cattle. Magnesium is important in the bones and muscles, but cannot readily access and utilize these stores when needed. The animal constantly loses magnesium in urine, feces, and milk, so its magnesium in its feed to meet daily requirements is important.
Kyle, you need to get a silo so you can sell this directly to the friggin'
Now we go on to zinc. Zinc is a major player in the creation of DNA, growth of cells, building proteins, healing damaged tissue, and supporting a healthy immune system. Because it helps cells to grow and multiply, adequate zinc is required during times of rapid growth, such as childhood, adolescence, and pregnancy. Zinc is also involved with the senses of taste and smell. Rich sources would be shellfish, oysters, crab, lobster, beef, poultry, pork, legumes, nuts, seeds, whole grains, fortified breakfast cereals, which I don't recommend. I prefer a more natural breakfast myself. Again, it's used for to ward off colds. It's why they use it in lozenges. Deficiency include loss of taste or smell, poor appetite, depressed mood, decreased immunity, delayed wound healing, diarrhea, hair loss. Again, be careful. You don't want to get to the level of toxicity. That would include nausea, vomiting, poor appetite, abdominal pain or cramping, headaches, diarrhea.
So don't be a moron.
Exactly. Rich sources. Let me see. Oh, it helps prevent age-related macular degeneration. Helps to treat the common cold. Rich sources, again, oysters, chuck roast, Alaska king crab, dark meat chicken, cashews, and of course, zinc supplements. Zinc is a powerful trace mineral for cattle. From breeding to good feet, it plays an important role. Let me see. Several benefits. With so much good science, the benefits of feeding zinc has several examples, such as strong hooves, because zinc is part of specific enzyme systems involved in epithelial skin formation and repair. Feeding extra dietary zinc is thought to strengthen cattle hooves, particularly under harsh field and housing conditions. Less sickness in your cattle. Fertility. Zinc has been shown to play an essential role in many cow reproductive functions. Manganese. For humans, manganese helps the body form connective tissues, bones, blood clotting factors, and sex hormones. It also plays a role in fat and carbohydrate metabolism, calcium absorption, and blood sugar regulation. Manganese is also necessary for normal brain and nerve functions. It helps with osteoporosis, arthritis, PMS, which is premenstrual syndrome, diabetes, epilepsy. Dietary sources. Rich dietary sources of manganese include nuts and seeds, wheat germ, and whole grains, including unrefined cereals, buckwheat, bulgur wheat, and oats, legumes, and pineapples. Available forms of a wide variety, including salts, sulfate and gluconate, manganese chelates, aspartate, picolinate, fumarate, malate, succinate, citrate, and amino acid chelate. Sorry, guys, if I mispronounced. Manganese supplements can be taken as tablets or capsules, usually along with other vitamins and minerals in the form of a multivitamin. Again, balance is key. Manganese supplementation impacts dairy cow performance. Manganese is a cofactor for enzymes that are involved in fat metabolism, carbohydrate metabolism, and energy production, and it is critical to cattle health as an antioxidant. Additionally, as a cofactor in the production of cholesterol, manganese is essential to reproductive performance. Manganese is also responsible for the production of glycoproteins, which are precursors for connective tissue and bone formation. Therefore, a severe manganese deficiency in dry cows can result in their offspring having inadequate bone formation, weak, deformed legs.
Now, just imagine all of us being starved of these this nutrient. And we are. It's not showing up in our food. And she's reading all these nut farms and all these nuts and seeds. They're all produced conventionally. So of course they're not going to have the levels that we actually need, or you're going to have to consume so much of them to get the little bit you need that it's just unrealistic.
Now, so, I use cows as an example. But
no, that was
horses, pigs, chickens, all of those animals would benefit, including us. Yeah.
We all need it. All things need it. So again, think of the value that you're creating, Keith, in this product. That's why I get so pissed at Jim when he's not going to give you salespeople to get out and really get this out to the market. But that's a conversation we'll have off camera.
We're getting there.
All right. Well, I think we got it wrapped for today. Unless there's any questions, Keith, or Ken. or Kyle, Robbie, anybody want last comment, or we good?
I'm looking forward to next year's test results, and thank you to the farmer for having the courage.
Right?
That's amazing. That is the biggest leap of faith I think I've ever witnessed. So
Farmers are all about that bottom line.
And 200 acres, dude, not
Yeah.
10.
Yeah, that's not a small commitment.
that's
You
amazing.
know what's crazy is he had, I don't know how many farmers out there, and they all said, oh, well, maybe I'll do 10 acres next year. You're standing in a 200-acre field, you dumb fuck. Why wouldn't you just do 200 acres? Anyway. Go ahead and wrap it up, Ken. And thank you guys for coming on today. Much appreciate Keith, Kyle, and Robbie. And as always, Av, thank you. And Ken, thanks for all the hard work behind the scenes to put on today's show. Much
Great
appreciated.
show, guys.
Thank you.
Well, I can't do it without my wife's help, so I got to give her a lot of credit for this as well. She allows me to do this, to spend 15 hours a day doing this stuff. Keith, we also had a great interview with Keith earlier this week on The Passion Within. You guys might want to check that out. And next week's guest, of course, excuse me, is a wonderful young lady that you guys are really going to appreciate. Her handle on IG is Soil is Sexy. So you can type that in and see the amazing young lady we're going to have on for next week. I know that Keith and everybody here is so excited about this data that we've been able to share today. I want to thank everybody that came onto the live stream. Guys, share this out. The farmers need to know what the hell is going on. And this was actually more cost effective than what would be normally done. And the benefits of being able to sell the product to people that want it and pay a higher price point because of the nutrition that's in it is extreme. So with that, guys, unless you guys have something else to add, we're pretty much done.
Keith, I'm waiting for fishbrew to hit Canada.
We're working on it. I'm working on it.
Okay.
I've been bugging him, Lil. I've been bugging him for a while on that, but he's got all those fish and oysters. They keep
I
fucking.
heard somebody good things about it.
Av, do you got anything to add, brother?
No. Thanks everyone. I will hopefully have Leighton join me on a nice and Ken. We're gonna have a chat on Wednesday with some nice LSO growers in Canada and North America. So yeah. Thanks.
What time is that one, Av?
That is I think 3:00 PST.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3:00 PST on Wednesday.
Yeah, and I got a 4:30, so that should work perfect.
Perfect. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Keith. Thanks,
Kyle and Robbie.
Kyle and Robbie. That was phenomenal.
All right, you guys take care.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Yep.
Okay, guys, with that, we're going to, unless Keith, you have anything you'd like to add as an end note.
And note, if you check out fishbrew.com, the website, those are retail prices for farmers out there. Call me about bulk.
There you go, guys, because the bulk is going to be cheaper, and it's the farmers that we really need to get this product out into their hands, not just the cannabis growers.
Agreed.
Okay, guys, take care, everybody. Peace out. We'll see you next week.